When it comes to change, there's always two sides to the coin. How many times have you heard in your life that you haven't changed? You're still the same person. You do this, you do that. You know, you might be referring to a friend that you've had from childhood, a girlfriend that you've had from the past, a boyfriend that you've had from the past, and these people years later seem to have this same perception of you. Although it's invalid, they still have this perception of you, of the person that you were when you were 18 years old, 20 years old, and now you're 35 years old, and people are still basing their judgment of you today on the person that you were 15, 20, whatever, 10 years ago. It doesn't really matter. That's because there are always two sides to the coin. As a matter of fact, it's probably not even a coin. It's probably more like a pyramid or some other kind of object that has multiple sides. But change is not something that is just cut and dry. If you say that you're a changed person, there's no way for the outside world to know that you're a changed person, okay? Unless you continue to interact with someone and they can see over a long time, if they can see over an elongated period of time that your response emotionally, mentally, physically to certain events in your life, in your space is different, nobody's ever going to know. So let's kind of trace it back to where does change occur? When you need to change, when you need to become a different person, you cannot, first of all, expect the rest of the world to be able to keep up with that. You cannot expect, and you wouldn't know either if somebody else changed or did not change, because you don't pay attention. You know, unless it's a significant other, your child, your parent, you're never paying attention enough to people in your life to know whether or not they've significantly changed events in their life or their thought process and how they behave about certain things. Yeah, sure, we all knew that guy in high school who was kind of a wild, rowdy guy, and they were always getting in fights, always doing this or that, or girls who were just doing this or that in high school. And today, we don't know anything about them, all right? We all know those people, and we could say today, yeah, wow, look at him. He's the owner of a car wash. The guy has really got his act together. I remember he used to be the biggest bully in high school. Of course, there's the very obvious change. But if that's the way we look at everything, we're going to look at everything in a very black and white manner. So what I want you to know is, if you plan on changing, you have always got to start with numero uno. You've always got to start with yourself. You've got to start with the only person that it truly matters to, and that is you. Because if you don't change inside, nobody else is going to care to see the outside. Nobody else is ever going to realize the outside. And that is also a good feedback monitor for you. That is a good gauge to whether or not you actually feel like you've changed. And if you have changed, is by the world around you, how it reacts to you and your reactions. So again, let's kind of reel this back. Let's just say that you're somebody who used to be a certain way. Maybe you had a drug problem, maybe you had an alcohol problem, maybe you had jealousy issues, maybe you were somebody who was intensely controlling or emotionless, something like this, and now all of a sudden you want to change that about you because you realize that this has impacted people in your life over an extended period of time. Maybe your family doesn't interact with you anymore because you behave a certain way. Maybe your significant other has left you because you behave a certain way. Maybe your children don't respond to you, don't respect you because you behave a certain way over time. You have conditioned people to respond to you in certain ways, and until you change and do the work and put in the time to condition them in a more positive way, you're never going to get the proper results. So if you want to start changing, if you want to get away from the way that it used to be, you have to start with adjusting your mentality. And one of the biggest things, one of the absolute biggest things, I don't care what anybody else says, is your level of emotional maturity. You have to have a significantly high level of emotional maturity. And when I say that, I don't mean that you're the type of person who's cold, who's callous, who can, you know, just make stoicism your tagline for everything. Like, I'm a stoic guy, I'm this, I'm that, you know. No, you don't need to be that way. What you need to be is somebody who actually learns how to internalize things, learns how to process them in a very healthy way, in a way that doesn't go off the rocker, doesn't go off the handle, doesn't flip out when something doesn't go your way, when something is outside of your realm of control. Your emotional response to this is something along the lines of, I cannot change this right now. I'm going to respond to it in a very appropriate way. Or even more, step outside of your body in that moment and just say to yourself, this is not the outcome that I wanted. This is not how I pictured this going, but I'm not going to let this moment own me. I'm not going to let it control me. I'm not going to lose control of myself, so I'm going to keep it together. Yes, I completely agree. It's definitely going to take some time to, that was me just brushing the cat away. Sorry. For all you cat lovers, I'm a cat lover as well, but this little guy just would not leave me alone. So, let's come back to topic. You have to have a very stable level of emotional maturity, and this means that it's your reaction to external stimuli. It's how you interpret things, and you can interpret them in a very healthy way, and you can interpret them in a very unhealthy way. We all know the difference. We've all seen the difference. We've seen people in our lives fly off the handle, smash things, hit things, drive their car erratically, flip out, just say completely irrational things in the heat of the moment because they lack emotional maturity. And then there's the other side of emotional maturity, which is, I am going to clam up, I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to internalize things completely rather than communicate, and I'm going to even be passive aggressive to some degree. That is also emotional immaturity. An emotionally mature individual knows how to communicate properly, and if they don't know how to properly communicate, then they at least know how to say, I can't find the right words in this moment, let me process this, I'll come back to it with some kind of, different response. But it's better to at least take that route than flip off the handle, okay? I have dated probably 2 women in my life, never mention names, that were completely insane in their reaction to certain things. And I myself have overreacted to certain things in my life. My father was a huge overreaction person. I mean, he was somebody who had regular temper tantrums. If things didn't go his way, he was flipping out, he was smashing things, he was breaking things. He would, even on one occasion, I remember seeing him take a birthday cake and just throw it in the garbage. Something that my mom had made for him for his birthday, he threw it in the trash. That's terrible, especially for your children to see that. But that is emotional immaturity. So that's where you have to start. You always have to start there. Okay, if you want to change things, learn how to first receive the external stimuli and then interpret that. And if you realize or even think, and this is going to get pretty deep right here when I say this, but if you start thinking along the lines of, and true or not, who knows, right? But start thinking along the lines of simulation theory, that maybe the possibility of this world not truly being what we think it is, but that we're all actually some kind of, we're beings in this large simulation. I know it's very far-fetched sounding. That makes sense to me when I hear myself say that and I hear people listening to this. But just think of that. Let's just think that things are not ever exactly what they appear to be. If you kind of mentally detach from a moment like that, then you have more control over it. If you just think like, this event is not as bad as it appears. This event is minor. The only way it's going to become something bigger is if I make it into something bigger. And it's easy to step outside the situation if you kind of role play in that way, all right? If that's your only chance. But gaining control of your emotions, especially over a period of time, it's going to be a slow process. This is not something that somebody can say, all right, I'm going to start being more in control of my emotions. It just doesn't happen that way. You have to practice this for years. You have to be the type of person who can be annoyed by your parents, who can be annoyed by your children, who can be annoyed by your significant other and still manage to hold it together. Somebody who people can cut off in traffic, people can give you the finger and you just kind of laugh it off and say, you know what? Not today. I'm not going to let somebody get to me today. And of course, we all have that voice in our head that's just furious. It's somebody who wants to react. You want to just punch somebody. You want to scream in someone's face, but you're not going to do that. Why? Because one, you're more rational than that. But two, even if you're not in the realm of rationality and you are more on the side of completely emotionally irrational, you still hold it together, thus appearing to be someone who's got some control over their emotions. All right. So that's number one, emotional maturity. Number two, you need to have more, what's a good way to say this? You need to be more of a thinker. You need to be able to interpret your settings. You need to be able to read the room, to read the environment, to read people. If you want people to understand that you've changed, then you have to slow down this piece of equipment on your body. Your mouth will get you into so much trouble, okay? Your mouth will sometimes say things that aren't true. Your mouth will sometimes build up these scenarios that never pan out. Your mouth will cash checks. Oh, wait, no. What's the way to say it? Your mouth will write checks that your ass can't cash. And that's a pretty funny thing to say, but it's true because it happens so often. Our mouths get us into trouble. And that could be with our significant other. That could be with our children. That could be with our parents. That could be with, school officials. It doesn't really matter who it can be with, but sometimes we just have to learn to check our mouths, all right? We have to develop emotional maturity. We have to learn to watch what we're saying. We have to be more intelligent about that process because we can't just fly off the handle. We can't just react to things how we want. We have to be able to take things in. We have to be able to interpret them. We have to be able to control what comes out, how our response is coming out. So while a lot of the emotional maturity stuff is on the inside, your voice projects outward, and your voice, the things that you say, is your biggest representation. If you go into this relationship or you start a new relationship with somebody and that relationship is going really well, it's off to a great start, but now all of a sudden that person gets to hear you a little bit more. They get to talk to you a little bit more, and they start to realize, like, this individual is not the person that I thought they were. I actually respected them more before I heard them talking as much as they do. So always keep in mind that your mouth needs to sometimes be tamed. You need to sometimes learn, to shut up at times, if I'm going to be brash about it. You need to learn how to check your mouth. And it's not a bad thing to combine the two. When you hear something, let's just say you're laying in bed with your significant other and you start having this disagreement and you feel it fueling, you feel it brewing into something that's potentially going to be larger, where if you say the wrong thing, you're both going to bed mad, you're going to sleep on the couch, whatever. In that moment, stop, reflect, think about where things are going, think about what is going on, why you're feeling the way that you feel. It's all introspection, right? It's all introspection. It's all looking at this thing, this event, these words that are coming out of this other person's mouth, these events that are coming from external stimuli, and the way you're receiving them. Now, combine, again, emotional maturity. Watch your mouth, control things, take it in, receive it, think about it, process it. Everything that happens in your life doesn't have to be responded to in a matter of seconds. In fact, the longer you take to interpret something, if it's not like a business decision, if it's not a critical life-saving measure that you're getting ready to do, stop, slow down, take a minute. I can't tell you how many text conversations I've had that have turned into text arguments in my past because we just continue to let it climb and climb and climb, and instead of just stopping and saying, hey, you know what, this is on the wrong track, let's back away from this, let's just step away from the situation, come back, we'll think about it, we'll get back to this later, we'll pick it up when we're in person, is such a better response to have than just continuing and fueling and fueling and fueling and going so far above and beyond that person now can't unhear the things that they've just heard, can't unread the things that they've just read. So again, emotional maturity, watching your mouth, taking things in, introspection, thinking more about things. You have to become intelligent in the process. That is why little children respond immaturely. They respond emotionally because they don't have that level of emotional maturity. They don't have that logic in their head that says, hey, look, this event's not as bad as it is. I'm not going to flip out. When somebody takes my toy, I'm not going to flip out. Children can't have that. They need to learn that. We need to learn that. And if we're not there by the age of 2025, then that should tell us that we need to do some work on ourselves. So if you're 30, 35, 40 years old and you continue to react strongly to these things, then you need to understand that you've had poor emotional control your entire life. Nobody's ever taught you how to bring things in, to interpret them, to think about things and not react harshly to them. You know, emotional maturity is a huge thing, but it's very rarely taught from parent to child. And the last thing is, you need to really understand that when you do change, when you change your thought process, you also change the way that you respond to things. When you change the way that you respond to things, you start to project this image of a changed person. That is how people are going to realize that you are not the same person. They're going to realize that, hey, this individual doesn't talk to me the way that they used to. I remember when this person used to flip out and fly off the handle, and now they're not doing that anymore. Sorry, let's see, the low battery thing came on. They're going to start to realize that you are a changed person because the way that you respond to things is no longer the way that they remember. And it's going to take time. If people want to be able to understand you as a changed person, they have to see this repeated behavior over and over and over. You cannot just be that person who says, I'm not who I was at the age of 18. Obviously, none of us are the same person we were at the age of 18, but at the same time, for that person who thinks that, who bases their judgment of us on the person that we were 10, 15, 20 years ago, they need to have more exposure to us. They need to see changes. Now, you can project change with body language. You can project change with, higher level of confidence. You can also project change by just shutting this, like we talked about, because that is a sign of a confident person. When you don't need to sit there and chit chat nonstop, or to talk, or to fill the empty space with noise just because you're uncomfortable, that shows something. It projects confidence, it projects a sense of, I'm comfortable with any way this environment goes. So keep that in mind. That's the one side of the coin, is that if you want change to occur, you've got to change up here. And it's going to take time. It's going to take work. It's going to take some extreme repetition. Getting control of your emotions is something that's going to take a matter of years, not a matter of days, not a matter of months. So if you want to be with somebody and you realize that they don't respond to certain things in a very emotionally mature way, it might take them years to get to the point where you two can finally, in a very healthy way, communicate through certain issues, communicate through certain problems. It's just a commitment. It's a long road, all right? And that's the same way it is with people on the outside, friends, family, anyone else, people who knew you from high school. They're only going to know that you've changed based on exposure. And if you can't even come off as a changed person to your significant other, the person whose life you're in on a daily basis, just imagine how difficult it is to project that change into people who you rarely see. So sometimes the only thing you can say is, you know what? That's fine that you think that about me, emotional maturity. It's fine that you think that about me. I'm not that person anymore. If you want to hang out sometime, get a drink, give yourself the opportunity to be able to show someone that you are someone capable of conversation, someone capable of, having rational, logical discussions about certain things without becoming emotionally heated. I tell you, I don't hang out with people who are emotionally heated about certain things. That the less people I can be around that respond to things in such an emotionally irrational way, I can't have too few of them. Like, I want none. I want none of those people in my life, because it's such a tiring and exhausting thing to sit there and try to work with someone who is just impossible in that sense. So surround yourself with good people. Surround yourself with people who do have that level of emotional control, and that is going to actually bleed off. You're going to pick that up through osmosis. You could be in a group of people and somebody does something to, trigger you that would have triggered you significantly or in a very strong way in the past. If you see that those 3, 4, 5 people around you are not reacting, they're not becoming emotionally stimulated in a very negative way, then you're going to inherit that. You're going to pull that in. That's really all I got to say about that. Is change is something that we all say this. I'm a changed person. I'm not the same person I was back then. That's fine. That's fine. But truly, the way to know if you are actually a changed person is, I need to interact with you more. I need to see more of you. And if I don't see more of you, then the only thing I have is that impression of you that I had from 5 years ago, from 2 years ago, from 10 years ago. It doesn't really matter. So remember, you can change, but don't always change for anyone else too. Unless you're in a relationship and it's, crucial for the survival of your relationship that you learn to start approaching certain topics from different ways. Don't worry about convincing the outside world. People will hear about your new behavior. People will see the way that you behave now versus the way that you did if they're around you. And if they're not around you, then it doesn't really matter, does it? But again, just keep in mind that there are always two sides to that coin. There is the side that you know, and the side that you can control, and the side that everybody else in the world sees, and that might be the one that has a negative impression that will take time to overcome. And you can overcome it, but you first need to do the work up here, and then you need to show that you've done that work in your reactions to the external environment. That's all I got to say. Hopefully this helped. If you're interested in this topic, please subscribe. I enjoy making these videos, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.